everybody knows means Wisconsin's Door County Peninsula. So what's odd, however, is that despite being swollen and purple, since 2011, Republicans have managed to dominate both the Senate and House of that state. They even had the governor for a lot of that time as well. That's weird, right? If they're such a throbbing purple state, how do their state races always generate Republican legislatures? Perhaps, and I'm just throwing this out there, over there, but perhaps it has something to do with the fact that their then governor, a Mr. Scott Walker, redrew the district maps in 2011, and in fact redrew the map with only a single public hearing to vet the process. Hey now, that feels like cheating, don't you know? We'll be talking about Scott a bit later, but you probably already see how this is going to be insidiously boring. Gerrymandering and court cases and maps. So boring. Almost as boring as a Wisconsin Dells duck boat ride where you're kind of in water for part of the time and that's all that happens. It feels like a quick little blip, this one tiny change to their maps. And that's kind of the point. The GOP wants this stuff to be boring because while some experts, synonym for dumb nerd, have argued that the natural geography of this state would tilt Republican anyway, there's no doubt that this redrawing was specifically designed to give the GOP a, quote, extreme electoral bias. For example, out of 99 races for the 2022 Wisconsin State Assembly, all but 8 of them were decided within a margin over 10 points. Almost every Wisconsin State Assembly race is mapped and districted to be an automatic landslide. Also, even if some of that edge is because of the political geography of the state, maybe that's also a little bad. Maybe we should change the way we vote if the mountains and rivers have such an impact on who gets elected. We shouldn't live in a country where building a dam might create an alternate Biff Tannen universe. Because Wisconsin is, I can't stress this enough, purple as hell. Both parties are tied, so neither party should have any edge, but they super do. Their state legislature got gerrymandered and Republicanized, not just once, but twice, and we will talk about exactly how that happened. But first, I really want to demonstrate what this all means, and to best do that, we should look at Wisconsin's 2018 state election results. In that election, Democrats won 205,000 more votes than Republicans. Overall, they won 53% of the votes. And yet, amazingly, that majority victory resulted in only 36% of the seats. Again, 53%. Over 200,000 more votes. And they somehow only swung one seat. Or to frame it the opposite way, mathematically speaking, Republicans lost that election, and yet they still won almost a supermajority. That is, to be polite, bad. But it's also super normal if you live in Wisconsin, a state where all the elections are pee-wee wacky. And to be fair to these duck fuckers, they do know that it isn't normal. Since 2011, 56 of Wisconsin's 72 counties have either passed a county board resolution or ballot referendum endorsing nonpartisan maps. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters gathered at a 2021 meeting about state legislature redistricting. So they're all out here bothering to care. They're begging for their votes to happen on a map where votes would actually matter, because they have to beg for that. Voting no longer helps much in Wisconsin, at least not if you're a Democrat, despite your party representing half of the state. The best they can do is re-elect a governor whose entire job is ostensibly to try and block any legislation that might make the situation worse. So at this point, you might be wondering why any of this matters, to which I actually have an answer. Like a really specific and tangible answer that makes this an extremely important episode. Not like my regular rambling dog shit episodes, am I right?
You may have seen it on Our Era and on other Twin Cities stations in the past few days. New commercials and attack ads for a Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. The hard-hitting spots are targeting Western Wisconsin voters in a race that's getting some nationwide attention. So we called in Esme Murphy to join us with an explanation of what is going on.
What is going on? And you've seen these ads probably, and it startled you because you're not sure what they're for. Well, it is for the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat, and none other than the New York Times is calling this race the most important election in the nation in 2023.
Wow, even their news anchors are purple. What they're referring to there are the hard-hitting multimedia pitches for conservative candidate Daniel Kelly and liberal candidate Janet Protasewicz, who we all know are the winners of the February 2023 primary election to fill a seat on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. We all know that. The final election will be happening right after this episode comes out, like days after, on April 4th. Did you get ads for the candidates? You could have. This special election for one state-level judicial race absolutely has a humongous enough budget to fund big ads. Just at the primary level, the 6 original candidates spent a combined $7.3 million on TV ads, and Janet Protasewicz alone raised over $2.2 million. According to one political scientist, this race will likely cost tens of millions of dollars. That's more than some states' election campaigns for governor. Why? How? Where? Whems? To skip the nonsense last one and answer that second to last one first, the where is Wisconsin. It's weird you'd ask that, and in such a confusing way. As for the why and how, well, there are 7 seats on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. 6 of them are filled, and I bet you can guess what the ideological split is for those 6 seats. They're filled with 3 lefty loonies and 3 righty ragamuffins. So that makes this 7th seat an ideological swing vote. This election between a conservative and liberal will decide which way the courts will lean. And considering everything we've already said about how broken their district maps are, you can imagine that this is pretty gosh darn important. It's scary out there in Wisconsin. Because of how often they redraw these maps and the consequences of doing so, it seems like every election is basically a vote on which party gets to stack the deck, or specifically, a vote on whether or not the GOP gets to stack the deck even more. Even if you are a Republican, you should realize that you can't have a functioning democracy that way. You're just surviving. But thanks to the magic of a Democratic governor and a single and suddenly flippable seat on the state judiciary, there is a sliver of a chance that Wisconsin will be able to actually turn purple again. Or, said another way, be a democracy. Because, again, Wisconsin is a purple state, as purple as Grimace, or Twilight Sparkle, or Kilgrave. And just like those characters, the state should not be underestimated. Twilight Sparkle might look cute, but that thing is still a horse, alright? And horses have no morality. They live by godless horse rules. Grimace kills just to feel something. I forget what Kilgrave does, but I'm sure it's also bad. And similarly, Wisconsin might feel innocuous, but it has a frightening influence over the rest of the nation. Yeah, I already mentioned Grimace. This is all to say that this one court decision in this very purple state is going to have countrywide effects. Redrawing the map alone will have a profound effect. But also, since elections are so close, they're often decided by the state Supreme Court. For example, when they narrowly tossed out Donald Trump's push to throw out mail-in votes. And so this one election, which for my Wisconsin half-duck viewers I can't stress enough is very soon, April 4th, could decide who the next president will be. But it also will have an enormous impact within the state, of course. For example, thanks to a lawsuit concerning the state's 1849 ban on most abortions, women's reproductive rights in this state are going to come down to this same Supreme Court. On Tuesday, April 4th of this year, there is an election in Wisconsin that could decide everything. So, you know, no pressure. But hey now, this isn't actually a video about that. I mean, it's sort of about that, but it's also about the state of Wisconsin and the history of how this state got so very messed up. It's a Wiscautionary tale about a place that you may or may not want to think about, but don't really have a choice. You already clicked on the video. Here we are. It's just like how there's nothing I can do about Warmbo littering my house with loose hay and gravel, which he is currently doing for some reason. So let's cut to an ad while I look into that. Buddy, no! Has this ever happened to you?
My soul is trash.
Trash.
Then you need to subscribe to the Some More News Patreon. That's patreon.com/somemorenews. And you can get your miserable life together in no time.
Thanks, Some More News. You really helped me, a random stranger, get my miserable life together by giving me every episode of Some More News uncensored, ad